Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have Kasra Ghanbari, CEO of Comic Art Fans, and we talk about the value and opportunities CAF is giving indie creators, how Kasra and his team are changing the landscape of what it means to be indie, and why community in any landscape is vital for success. All this and so much more on today's very special episode of Inspired Inc.
Bring your comic books to life and print your comics with Comix Wellspring.
Dude, I'm so excited for what you are a part of, what you do, what you're trying to basically create in the indie scene. Why don't you tell us just everything about what is going on with this auctioning and, promoting indie art? Where did this passion come from? Where did this love come from for indie art?
All right, I have no idea where to start. Everything is a big word. You use the word everything. So, man, where do we start? Should I just start with what Comic Art Fans
Yeah, let's
is?
talk about comic art fans. Like, what do indie artists need to know about it? And,
Yeah.
this is a collector's place. And I feel like indie creators, especially, don't have a footing in the collector's mindset. I came from kind of a collector's background before I started, making comics. I would go to San Diego and I'd get original art. I have some, Mark Bagley, some Bruce Timm stuff, like all
Oh, you
sorts of
got
things.
you got real.
I
That's
have
some
some
real
cool stuff.
stuff.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
throw down some names real quick. But I mean, I loved that experience. I loved getting, I have a spawn from Bruce Timm, which is like the coolest thing I could think
Mm,
of. And I cherish that. But you're pivoting the perception of art and what is meant as a collectible, and you're kind of making people realize art is art. And an indies drawing of art of Spawn or any of these characters is sometimes way cooler than some of the higher ups. So where did this kind of
exactly.
incentive come from for you?
Well, man, I'm trying to figure out where to start. So comicartfans.com is basically the global hub for everything related to comic and narrative or visual or storytelling art. So there's some illustration on there. There's some movie related art and storyboards and animation. There are all kinds of things, but overwhelmingly, especially right now, it's comic art of every genre, every category, every year, type, age, what have you. And it's built on collectors being able to come there and post pieces from their collection and interact with one another. It was built on that, but what it became was just way more, because then the artist representatives started getting involved, and
Mhm.
auction houses, every one of them that sells any kind of comic art, they got involved. And most important to me, and if you want to know a little bit more about me, we can get into it. But most important, artists got involved. So it is no longer a collector-based site. It is uh, our thing is it's 50-50, the collector and the artist. Everything else is sort of, either the gray area in between or outside of the gravitational force of the sphere being formed by artists and collectors there. And that kind of passes through to everything we do. We started a show called the Original Art Expo, that's art only in Orlando, and we'll talk about it. But uh, our our goal was to make the collectors just as important as the artists. It's a 50-50 thing. So we carry that through everything that we do at Comic Art Fans. So artists and collectors, the accounts are free. You don't have to. There's a premium level. It's $75 a year, and you get a lot of advantages. But I won't go into it. The important thing is it's free. It's free. You can interact, email, comment, follow people, get keyword searches emailed to you. We just launched an app. Basically, we are trying to be global enablers. And enablers, maybe that sounds double-edged. I don't know. give someone a cigarette, and then they smoke weed, and then when they smoke weed, they do coke. I don't know. And we want to facilitate and enable, whether it's a collector or whether it's an artist. So I'll give you two angles. I'll shut up, and you can ask me specific stuff. But if you're a collector, you post stuff, people see what you like, you interact, you have, let's say I like a particular a book by Daniel Warren Johnson, right? And I'm just a Transformers fan, and I have like a bunch of commissions from Transformers. I have my galleries. I set them up the way they want, by theme, by artist, by however I like. I post art, I interact, all that. But then I have keywords. I'm like, when a Daniel Warren Johnson gets posted on the site by any of the tens and tens and tens of thousands of people who use it, I'll be notified. I get to see it. I get to see something that Daniel Warren Johnson did at like some local show that he brought his family to that no one even knew about. And it's that kind of stuff, right? But also if something comes up for sale, I have a shot to look at it and decide, do I want this for my collection or not? Now, if you're an artist, it's free. And we basically have built a site where within minutes, you can be really orientated about how to set up your free gallery. So you have a space in the world where you have a very easy to use interface where you can upload dozens and dozens of art images within 30 minutes. With the app, it's even quicker now. It's crazy with the app, right? You can have stuff for sale. You can use the art for people to get to know you and the books that you're making, or who you work with, or send them to your website. You can do anything you like. We don't have any restrictions. It's for you, right? And that's basically, the outlook for CAF, where we model ourselves as a for-profit company, but we're really as a for-profit sandwiched between a nonprofit and a union. And the nonprofit is kind of a little bit more collector based, where it's educational and promotional, and the union is more on the artist side, where we're here to help artists and make it easy for them, and let the best person sort of win, if you will. If your art sings and sales, people will respond. You're in an environment where what do we get? 3 million page views, 4 million page views a month. We have like 20,000 people that actively use the site. I mean, actively, I mean, they're logging in and logging out and coming back and forth every month. It's the place to be.
I love that because, what really attracted me to collecting sketches and original art and finding creators and interacting with that was like, it became really hard to always go to a convention. And a lot of these collectors put their money aside just to go and get these collectible arts or signatures and sketches and whatnot. And if you weren't there at those events, you were kind of out of luck. Or you're having to go on eBay and pay, quadruple the price that, sometimes people do commissions for $50, $75, and you find it for 400 on eBay. And you're like, I'm never going to own art or even any original art from anyone I adore or admire. Or, people trying to find gifting ideas if they love a certain character or whatnot, and trying to get variety and reasonably priced items to actually like showcase in their homes and like give and whatnot. And I feel like you're giving people the opportunity to obtain this art, because comic book art is just it's the modern greats of our time. We study all these classical artists and do all this, but I mean, comic book artists now are some of the greatest like minds that have ever put pen to paper before. And so for an indie creator to have that opportunity to mix in with your Tony Daniels and your Scott Williams and Daniel Warren Johnsons and Paul Popes and everything, I love that, because now we're no longer kind of like conventions. Conventions are very separated on, here's the big people, we're going to put them over here, and then we're going to give the indie people an artist alley that's kind of crammed and like, pushed off to the side. But you're blending it all together.
We get to. So we have the opportunity to do that. We just sort of recognized it. And here's the truth. There is no difference between Scott Williams and Tony Daniels and insert indie creator. I don't care at what stage they are on the art side. So I get it. Indie cons have their own vibe, expectations, design, what have you, ambitions. Some of that we've just placed on it,
Ooh,
You know that.
yeah.
I mean, and some of it, some of it I love. I miss going to record stores. I miss going to like flea markets, and the big cons kind of promote themselves as like Tiffany's.
Yeah.
So I'm not insulting one and the other.
No,
I'm
yeah.
just saying that it's kind of felt that way by the public. But when we deal with the art, we get to deal with, I don't know, the most core, pure part of it. Why would we treat it with any kind of bias whatsoever? What is the difference between this image and this image? If I take away the names and things, you're just looking at like an image and how it makes you feel. And
Yeah.
we get to be guided by that. So what's cool, of course, is we live in a world where marketing matters, and momentum and hype and energy, and things need to be I get all of that, right? But we've already established comic art fans um, over a real period of time. We engage with different parts of the comic art world, which is so vast and varied. It's crazy. But it's still disproportionate to American superhero comics. I mean, we're not the only ones that sort of, I'm going to use strong words here, I think, suffer from that. The oxygen being taken out of the room from that.
Oh, yeah.
I love it, but I still recognize that, right? And I'm just taking a little bit of that out, and working with different corners of the comic art world, because the art form is way too important not to. And so how easy is it for us to slide that in, if you will? Sometimes for me, as the person that's kind of conceptualizing it, the fact that it's so easy to do tells me that we're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just, in a way, this sounds like a cold word, in a way we're institutionalizing it. I'm going to try to normalize it as fast as frickin' possible by having it be almost institutionalized,
Dude,
And we
that's
can talk
awesome.
about how we're doing that, but some of it's theoretical and some of it might be boring, but there's some real practical things that we're doing.
Well, I mean, that
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, stripping away like what we were just talking about before we hit record was, kind of stripping away Marvel and DC from things, and how what you were just saying, they flood the room, and then people kind of go towards and gravitate towards that just because of those names, that label being associated with it overall. And we forget art is beautiful, and you could probably find something that appeals more aesthetically to you and what you like if you explore outside of those boundaries. But we get so confined that if they're not published and if they're not making it and drawing Batman on the monthly title, we're putting a value on their work before anything else just because of that. And you have people like, I have dozens of creators we talk to every single week on here on our live art show. People come and check out all the like indie creators that come and draw, and they do immaculate, just insane pieces that we all feel are like, man, this deserves more attention. How are you not part of those greats? And you're giving them
Yeah.
that platform. It's a way of giving and uplifting that has never been done before, I don't think.
I know there's been so many good people that have come through, and they've tried to do good works, and all across the comic book industry, from conventions, indie scene, underground, especially publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those people they certainly started out as saints, and they were very giving. What I've seen over 20 plus years of actively like looking at this, engaging with it, and doing it, the problem that I have is I recognize very smart, very capable, high capacity people doing very important things. None of it sticks. That's my diagnosis, is that the aftermath of the good works is that very, very little of it stays. Very little of it remains and materially lifts the waters and the boats, right? That's the almost tragic, dramatic part of it, having looked at it for a long time. And a lot of my thinking as applied to this is to do something that sticks better.
Mm-hmm.
I know that might be I don't know, a low bar of expectation, but I think it's a good start, just to sort of recognize the fact that so many good things have been done, so many good people, so many well-intentioned stuff has been done, and let's not make no mistake, things are way better, way more diverse in the comic art space, I believe, than they were 20 years ago. As it's a little bit more polarized, so you can feel a little bit bipolar about it depending on the second, minute, and day of the week. I get that too, but things are better. I think that we have a chance here to bring art collectors in a very real, committed, long-term way into the indie scene. That is the crux of it. That is the basis of it. So I started indie publishing companies. I published a lot of books. I've done Small Press Expo and all sorts of shows. I've gone, with my books. My friend Josh Johnson, we did the Spindletons book. I've gone and done my weird limited edition cigar box letterpress print, hand numbered. Please look at me. Please look at me. Please look at me. Table stuff for years in the mid 2000s. And what I know is, as you kind of said before, it costs a lot of money to get there. You have to set up and you sell 12 books and you're happy you did it. You're happy you're there. The experience was awesome. I get it. But can't we supplement that with maybe a little bit more active art sales? So like the money I might have made on those 12 books, outside of the experience, it might have been $100 of profit, or you know what I mean? And can we set it up that a couple of art pieces could be sold, or some quick sketches or doodles or sketch cards or whatever someone likes, and you sell a couple of those for $50 each, and that just gets added to your, what you did. And it's a different way of engaging people. So I'm not saying we're inventing anything. People draw, people sell their art. No crap.
Yeah.
People make books and they sell their books. No crap. Can we do it better? Hell yes. And on the art side, it's barely been done at all for indie stuff. So, thank God, there's a couple of indie sort of artist collective rep type groups. One of them has been around for a long time out of Toronto, but Sean Watkins runs Athenium Comic Art. Wonderful group.
Yeah.
Take a look at them. I love Sean and I love the group. And there's a few out there, but there's not a lot. And I'll just be honest, they can't take on 300 artists. They can take on 20 maybe, right? They can't do 500 artists. They can't do every artist. They can't even do 10 artists that only publish at Fantagraphics, which is like high level work.
Yeah.
They're drawn in quarterly. And so what do? You have to have a platform that can scale as much as required.
Right.
That's what we're trying to build out. And then the idea is tens of thousands of eyeballs on the work, and you make minor investments into updating your gallery on Comic Art Fans, and people notify you, and it'll convert to engagement. Just invest in it and it'll happen.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. And I mean, it's one of those things too, that knowing like hearing a bit more about your background and knowing you've been in the trenches, what it's like to go out there and haggle and, try to get attention towards your work. And, I'm in the same boat. That's really why they brought me with CWS. Was Apollo City Comics was doing good. And then they knew I was tabling. They knew I made comics. So like, why don't we get the people who have done this and are part of this and know the community and what's missing? We need to get them more involved with these type of positions, like with what you have, because you know the solutions to help us. And we've seen so many artists just give up, and like, I mean, we're working on solutions to help indie creators. You know what I mean? With everything, both of us do, it seems like, and I love that. I mean, because so many people just stop. Some people give up because they're not getting the attention. They don't know how to, market themselves, or they're, camera shy and social media. But now it's another outlet they have where they can actually produce their work and make it meaningful in that sense to get out there. And with that big resurgence of indie, creation we've had since COVID, I feel like you guys dialed in at the right time to capture us and see how do we help you and keep you alive and going, because it's rough, and it's rough on the mental, it's rough on the wallet. So you're actually giving more than anything else with your whole priorities. And that's remarkable. That's not a lot of people really go in that mindset. They really think about, well, what's profit first? And you guys are kind of going after, how do I get them attention and grow and grow and grow? And that's what we need.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very important. Until we're no longer around, comic art fans will always be free. So we have a premium level, and we're going to add more to it.
What are some
And
of the perks on that? Just like quick incentives on that.
well, you can have like in much larger images posted. You have like much more in the way of the keywords that you can use. You can watch a lot more galleries. So there's like 80 people that watch my gallery, because you can watch someone's gallery, so you get alerted whenever it's updated. So for example, there's like 23 artists that have galleries on Comic Art Fans that I follow, because I want to know when they post anything. And then when it comes to the app, it's just automatically collated and filtered in my feed. So I'm just looking at exactly what I want before I venture into this mass of stuff being posted on Comic. Those are some of the advantage. But the keyword stuff, and when a piece comes for sale, let's just be honest, there might be a lot of people that want it, and it's always good to be alerted about it right away, so you got a chance. Mm-hmm. That's probably one of the core components of it. But from a functionality standpoint, there are some real advantages, and there are some features that are coming in 2025 that will really distinguish it. I'm talking like in a very real way. Like if you're involved at all, even as an artist, like just determining prices in the market. I mean, and anything like that, we're going to really enable people. And again, try to do it as inexpensively as possible, like $10 or less a month. And that still includes basically having your place in the world, your galleries, an online portfolio, and stuff for sale if you want, and featured art and updating and people following and keyword alerts and all that interactive stuff. Eventually a checkout system, an email system that exists right now. All of that is included. I just think genuinely, as someone who's been an art rep for 20 years as well, which I haven't mentioned, this is the no-brainer place to be. So we're just going to add more to it in 2025, kind of package it a little bit just so we can communicate it better, and then scale the hell out of it.
Oof, awesome. And you guys are already kind of scaling because you do these virtual cons as well, correct? You have 2 of them a year. January, I believe we have one coming up in a couple weeks. And then you kind of cap off the year, I believe, in November with another one. Do you want to talk a little bit about those events?
Yeah, it's a lot to keep in your head. You got at least 2/3 of that right. So we do have that virtual show. It is twice a year. It's called Comic Art Live. CAL, we just call it CAL, CAL. That's in May and November, and it's held on the Comic Art Fans site, and it's free to attend. So on second, usually. I'm going to make up stuff now because hold me to it, right? Let's say the second weekend of May, usually the second weekend of November. It's a Saturday, Sunday thing. It kind of has a launch on Friday night on our YouTube channel with like a big drawing event. It's awesome because you can attend it for free. But if you're one of the premium things I didn't mention for benefits is if you're a premium member on Comic Art Fans, you get a free exhibitor booth.
Oh, cool. That's sick.
So we normally have around 350 to 375 exhibitors. We have a Hall A for artists. We have a Hall C for collectors. We have a ones for art reps. And we introduced in our November show, right after announcing having acquired IC3 and brought Matt Sardo in, we announced Hall I, which is specifically for indie creators. And I mean, God bless the people that did it, because we had like maybe 8.3 days to put the whole thing together and explain to them what Comic Art Live was and get them to onboard and get the interface right. And 20, 22, 24 people did it. It was awesome. But the point is this: 30,000 unique people come to the show from all over the world on that Saturday and Sunday. We have 2 days of live panels on our YouTube channel, usually 6 or 8 panels a day, free. All of it's free. If you're premium, you get an exhibitor booth. And verified sales alone over that Saturday, Sunday are typically around $1 million to $1.3 million.
Oh, wow.
So again, from the comfort of your home, indie creator, I'm talking to you now. I'm looking straight into the camera. I'm being cheesy as shit right now, right? You could sit naked at home in any room you want, watching whatever you want, petting your cat, uploading your info, no travel cost, no hotel, no what the hell am I going to eat, no am I uncomfortable with this bathroom, no it smells funny in here, no nothing, right? For $0 and 20 minutes of orientation maybe, and 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops of setting up exactly what you want your Saturday booth to look like and your Sunday booth to look like, as they get released in the morning on each day. Mm-hmm. Once you're orientated, you got an exhibitor booth in a virtual show twice a year. Add it to your schedule, add it to your docket. Go to the shows physically, see people in person. Of course, we learned that how important that was in the pandemic. But now we can add 2 virtual shows to your annual schedule.
That's sick.
And yes, we do have a show in January. The January show is the Tiffany show.
Nice. Okay, cool.
The January show is, 500 attendee, 75 artists, 70 exhibitor booths with 200 exhibitors. So 700 to 800 people convening with a Friday reception and a Saturday, Sunday show and a major auction and all that. That's only art. It's only art and sort of gallery presentations of art as an educational component. That's the original Art Expo in Orlando. And it is the 24th to 26th. Which is why I look a little bit tired and weathered today.
Working through it. Yeah, I understand that completely. Setting up any of this type of stuff is exhausting, it's draining, but it's so rewarding for you too, I'm sure. Just seeing the execution and all of this come to life. I feel like, especially with the shows we do and how we promote creators, getting more attention towards them is more rewarding than any of the exhaustion we go through just trying to do it. And this works too, because at Heroes Con, every year they have the indie auction at the end of the night. I believe it's on Saturday, and that does so well. So you've kind of had a formula being tried and proven over and over again. And I've seen how much some of those indie artworks go for, and that's all for charity and whatnot. So, I mean, doing that and reversing it and making it a year-long thing where you could continuously make that type of money, and you could really help support yourself if you put the right effort into it. And it's just it's a free resource. I don't know. I mean, that's so simple. It's so insanely simple. Everyone should be signing up for it.
We just launched the app. It's in beta right now. The feedback has been phenomenal. There'll be a public launch maybe tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Look for it. You can go to Comic Art Fans, sign up for our newsletters. You can go to oa-expo.com, sign up for the newsletters, whatever you like.
Right. The links here in the episode description too, so people could go straight to there from here.
We're this far away from really presenting Comic Art Fans for what we want it to be and what we think it actually is, which is a 24/7 con all over the world. Follow the sun go down all over the world, wherever people are all over the world. Comic Art Fans is a 24/7 con. People are visiting it constantly. They're viewing galleries. They're looking at for sale pieces. They're contacting people, and they're buying stuff every minute of every day of the year.
I love that. That's an amazing just platform you have helped engineer and create and bring to life. So how did your relationship begin with Matt Sardo and IC3 and your involvement, and what are you looking to do with IC3 in general? It's such an amazing con. I got to attend it last year. Actually, Apollo is going to be tabling this year, so I'm so excited to be tabling and getting footage and all that stuff. We're gonna have our whole crew out there, half of our crew out there, and then of course Comix Wellspring as a team, we're going to be there as well. So it's going to be super exciting happening now that you guys are involved. So, how did IC3 grasp your attention, and kind of what are you hoping to do with that con?
I met Matt, wow, almost 15 years ago. We both lived in Chicago,
Oh, cool.
and I was working. I was doing art rep work, and I worked in the biotech pharma field, and but I was doing the art related stuff to stay sane, art rep and publishing and all that kind of stuff, the real passion stuff.
Yeah.
And then a guy that that I knew, an artist I was working with, we decided to pitch IDW on a creator-owned book. We came out with this book called Monocyte.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you. That was an Ashley Wood incentive cover.
Ooh.
And it was like an occult action adventure story. And Matt had Comic Vault, the comic book shop at was it right near Montrose and Ashland, which probably doesn't mean anything to most people listening, but it was 3 blocks from where I lived and 4 blocks from my studio,
Cool.
where I worked with these other people. And I would visit the shop. I went to some of his events, and Matt was sort of part of the scene, obviously, and he also interviewed us when Monocyte came out. I think it might even still be on the internet video. It was Temple Smith, artist M3, and myself. And then we ended up starting an art collective publisher called 44 Flood. And we did a whole bunch of books through 44 Flood, anthologies like Tome, and we worked with Steve Niles, and a lot of books with Ben Templesmith, a lot of gallery art, comic hybrid stuff. So even back then, I was sort of obsessed with there being no difference between comic art, illustration. The Tome anthology that I put together, 12 by 18-inch book, it's a brick. There was no difference between photography, fashion design, sequential pages, and like full-on like National Portrait Gallery level paintings. They were all housed in the same book. Did a couple of volumes of that. So that's how I met Matt, and we would hang out. Matt put on a little tiny show. I think it was I'm going to say Lincoln Square. He's probably going to hold me to this. And we actually exhibited at one of Matt's like it wasn't like a pop-up, but it was like a one-night kind of Chicago creator kind of thing.
Cool.
And that might have been that might have been 2011. I mean, we're talking it's pretty far back now, right? So that's how we met. And then fast forward a ways, I only joined Comic Art Fans 2 years ago, taking on the CEO thing with this like huge build out outlook that I wanted to do with the site, and how it could be applied, right? And we did really well, and we launched that Original Art Expo show just last January, and that was a really big move for us. And then I was trying to raise some funding for Comic Art Fans, so we'd have a little pile of money to be able to expand. I was able to do that over the summer into the fall. And then we hired a director of events in Tatiana Dykes, and we just announced vice president of operations, Matt DiTullio. I'm building out like a team that actually can execute on this stuff, because the founder, Bill Cox, and his wife Maureen Cox, and I were basically just drowning in work.
Yeah,
Especially Bill and I were like we're dying a little bit every day, but happy to do it kind of thing. So coming out of the funding, long story, only medium length, sorry about all the rambling, but there's the context. So coming out of like actually being able to raise a little bit of funding, I wanted to expand our event portfolio. Sounds very official, doesn't it? Investor language. So, I had Comic Art Live in May and November. Mm-hmm. I now had this art only incredible year one behemoth kind of on just like it's an art fair in January, Original Art Expo. And what I wanted to do, of course, was start an IndieCon, because that's actually my reward for doing this
Hell yeah.
is, publishing books and indie creators and discovering new artists.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally, give me pay, whatever happens and all that stuff. My actual reward is the enabling as an art rep on a scale that I never imagined, and engaging with fresh, new, incredible creators, which is to me the indie scene. So this doesn't make any sense, but I wanted to do an IndieCon, and I saw that Matt. I'd only moved to Florida a few years ago, and I saw that Matt was down here and not that far from me, and he's like posting about this IC3 thing, and I'm like, what the frick is going on, right? That doesn't happen, and I couldn't make it in March. It was the first OAX, and then prepping for funding and being sick and all of that, and I couldn't make it. But then after I raised funding and I was really confident about the path that we're on, I'm like, why start my own show? I'm a picky bastard when it comes to the things that I do. Like, I want a real foundation.
Yeah.
I want like the intention of it to be really laid out.
Mm-hmm.
I want the logo and the brand and the language that's used to describe it to be accurate and clear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I looked at IC3 and I'm like, my Lord,
Checks
I
all the
wouldn't change a
boxes.
thing. I wouldn't change a thing. That never happens. If anyone ever wanted to call me an a-hole, it would be because of how particular I am about starting things. Like, because then I feel like I have footing under me, and I can, if I want to do stupid stuff and like really leap and soar, I got that footing underneath me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way I work. Know thyself. So I'm like, hey Matt, how you doing? Where are you? I'm in Connecticut now. Why you moved? Why would you move to somewhere cold? All that stuff, right? And we met up, and we talked and talked and talked. I talked to him about all the private stuff with comic art fans and what we can do and what we could scale and all the things that I wanted to do. And I did a lot of the front end talking because I wanted no bias. I didn't want him to tell me what he wanted. I wanted to tell him what we were doing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Matt's like, okay, here's the show. Here's what happened. And I absorbed all of it. I've seen every video. I've read everything. I've found every note. I've talked to all the peoples. And I was very happy. I'll just put it that way. And we sort of melded the ideas, which it wasn't really even melding. It was automatic about what could be done. And I told him, again, the kernel at the center of it, as simple and subtle and almost mundane as it sounds, let's bring art collectors in a very real way into the indie scene. And let's use the CAF platform, the virtual cons, the free galleries, the marketplace and forced sale and the keywords and the exposure and we haven't talked to the YouTube channel and our newsletters and our reach, and even create a system where some artists can go to Original Art Expo. We have a thing, okay, and the app now. So, and he said, hell yes, of course, and we kept everything 100.0% the same moving forward, especially for the March show, and of course, Matt is still the showrunner.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Jones is the program director. Anthony's helping out. I mean, everybody. We're all meeting up in Orlando in 2 weeks to spend time with one another. After that, we got some stuff to announce, and I think it's only positive.
Cool.
We want to create a show that you can rely on
Yes.
every year, and maybe you can rely on 2 of them. And maybe eventually you can rely on 3 of them, and we're not going to overstep ourselves. But the idea is, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's there for you. And it'll be maybe in different parts of the country and promoted slightly differently than one another. But the ambition isn't to create some behemoth thing. It's for it to serve a very, very specific role in the indie scene. And there are other shows, and some of them are like unbelievable, like TCAF,
Mhm.
right? Or
Yeah.
MoMA, I mean, or MoCA, excuse me. I mean, I looked at all of the shows, where they're located, what their vibe is, size, scope, who they invite, how hard is it to get there, how expensive it is. Um, Kind of like, if you have to make up stuff and narratives and things and biases and things. I look at things very much as storytelling. So I think of an artist like coming out of an egg, and I think of an artist, with a cane, and I think of everything in between, career wise.
Hmm.
And you try to create like an arc where, well, if this happens, then they can move here. If this happens, then they have the option to do this. If this happens, then they have the option to do this. And what Matt and I would like for IC3, and IC3 as conjoined to CAF, Comic Art Fans, is to fill a very specific void in that sort of career life cycle,
Mm.
and to stay in our frickin' lane.
Oh wow. And so that's so specific. I love the specifics behind all of this. You have a ultimate goal, and it's really about, we're going to focus on indie creators and give them opportunities. We're going to give them a focus. We're going to give them attention they deserve, because I think all creators, and I mean, tabling the last couple of years, I felt it so much, where it's like, I hate us being stuffed in a corner and forgotten about. I hate that people will go to a con and they're like, oh, I have money for, finding a couple CGC books. I have money to get signature from, the people, Tom King and, Mitch Gerds and all that type of stuff. And they put money aside for that. And then they come across indie areas and they're like, this is so cool. I didn't know about other comics being made outside of the spectrum. Like, and nobody
Yeah.
plans to be like, oh, this is my indie budget. I'm going to go discover 10 new books that I'm really excited for to follow. And you guys set us up with the platform. I mean, that's what, Comics Wellspring loved about IC3. That's why we wanted to jump in and, do the powered by and all this type of stuff, because indie creators are our lifeblood, and knowing what they do and the attention they don't get, and like the fairness when it comes to art perception, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to just getting attention in general, they have like the least advantage out of everybody. You have to really know how to hustle and network and do all these things, but a lot of people don't even know how to do that. So even with our partnership, as we continue to teach people and share their stories, IC3 was just the ultimate place to be like, this is heaven for us. Like, this is every comic book creator, indie comic book creator's dream, is to have a show focused on them and highlighting them in a great environment. And last year was spectacular. This year is going to be even more bombastic, knowing we have more creators, knowing that you guys are involved. And I'm excited to see where the show grows from here at this point. We're only on year 2, and it's already hit such a high level and high mark. Can you give any insight on what you guys are planning for a future next year or anything? Or what is your dream to turn this convention into? What's your ultimate goal?
Well, you tie the indie creators. So anybody for at least for 2025, if you get accepted to IC3, you automatically get an exhibitor booth at Comic Art Live in May and November. It's free. You don't need a premium sub. You don't need to do anything. Just try it out.
Cool.
Just try it out. So that's one thing. Then we have all of our YouTube programming on Comic Art Fans, which is a really active channel. And there's at least a half a dozen new programs that are in process, that I have like 80% of the design done, and I just need people and a part-time producer to help me out, or Matt will be hosting a show, and other prominent people, for example, in the indie scene, specific to the indie scene. We're going to have regular programming, and it's going to highlight indie creators, whether they're at IC3 or not. So IC3 is going to be tied into the CAF ecosystem, the newsletters that go out to 8 to 12,000 people, little news bits, YouTube channel, long form, short term, short form, shorts, Instagram. I'm saying all of that because I'm trying to get to the core, and I try to avoid this word, and I always apologize for saying branding, but I don't know any frickin' way to say it better. When it comes to indie creators, things are so dynamic and they're so different. If you're doing a show like IC3 every year, the indie creators are like almost different human beings doing different things with different books, and different people are there. And I mean, you cannot categorize or cage or homogenize indie creation whatsoever. Whereas it is easier to do that with Marvel and DC, and it is easy to say, this is the Batman book, this is the X-Men book, yada, yada, yada. This is the creator, this is the one book, this is the writer that I follow, this is their book. Indie can't be like that. You have to create a thing. So it's a brand, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just, this is a thing. This is important. This is where it is physically, but it's also all over here as well, which is Comic Art Fans, Comic Art Live, YouTube channel, newsletters, get your info, interact with people, exclusive, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now I talked about the amorphous, esoteric, weird shit first. I should have talked about it second. We would love it to be a 2-day show.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And again, that sounds like a very simple thing, but it's really more about people make the effort. I'm talking about the exhibitors and creators now. They make the effort to come there. There's some advantages to a 1-day show because from a cost standpoint, you can come in and leave. You don't even have to get a hotel room. We all know that. Okay. Hotel rooms are a big thing. Housing. So a 2-day show is like potentially more than double the fun, or it can be a little bit of a letdown depending on how it's structured, how thoughtful you are about what happens. So we want all the events, we want all the opportunities, the panel, the education, the interaction to happen. So Matt and I are having lots of discussion, debate, what have you, about how to structure a 2-day show and when the right time to do it is. It feels like 2026 will be okay, but we have time. I mean, 2025 show hasn't even happened yet, but that would be a big step, right? Because we have you. Maybe you drive in and you wake up at 5 a.m. and you drive in on that first day. I get it. And but if you can stay for that one night, God, you got 2 like crazy long days where you better be caffeinated and you go and it's just worth it. And probably the worst part of it is when you get home, you're going to need an entire day to recuperate because those 2 days were like a week or like a week and a half of your life in just 2 days, right? So if we can get there, great. And then, you know, the slightly dreamy goal is to have a second IC3. But, you know, a lot of that is figuring out like deeply what IC3 is and that kind of focal role thing that I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of confidence about that, but it's one thing for me to just think about it in my head and for Matt to think about these sort of things in his head. We have to kind of really know what that is because it also has to be able to adapt because the indie scene adapts. And if we can figure that out a little bit, that means we can replicate it. That means we have some dominion on our intention.
Yes.
That's kind of the most like intense, weird way I can kind of say it, right? When we get there, there's no reason why we shouldn't have a second show, and because there are people in the Midwest, as far as I remember, that do indie comics, and there are people in the great Northwest and in California and in the South, and there are people that do this stuff. And if we have very well positioned and rolled out slowly regional shows that perform a specific function, that don't have this ambition to be 20,000 people, but they have this ambition to really enable and give that kind of fundamental push and exposure and momentum to you. 5 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour is very important.
Yeah.
Energy wise, you know what I'm saying,
100%,
right?
100%. Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. So there you go. I hope that was enough that I didn't skirt.
No, yeah. I mean,
answering
you're
your question.
trying to make accessibility pretty much like an ethos of what you've done since you've joined all this is how do I make it more accessible to collectors, to the audience, to indie creators? Like, how do I get a broader reach behind everybody? And that's essentially what you're doing with IC3. How do I give people that don't have this advantage a better advantage? And that seems to be really your core prospect behind everything. You see what people want, you see what people are attempting to do, what people dream of doing or owning or, selling and getting their name out there. And you're like, how do I give this to everybody? How do I just make it easy and give everybody a chance to sell art, to sell comics, to attend these conventions, to be part of this community? And it's just it's a big thing that's missing because everything gets so classified right now. So you're just tearing
Mhm.
down all the walls, getting rid of all these borders, and you're becoming, unified as a community. And that's really what we need. It's not competition, it's community.
I don't know if that's all true, but what I'll say that you're a very smart man. You just said some stuff that kind of punched me in the face. If I had a therapist, they'd probably be very happy with what you just said, because I'll tell you, as like a now just slightly past middle-aged dude who's frustrated as hell, who internally is kind of uh, a borderline psychotic anarchist who doesn't mind selective fires. Uh, I'm I get very bogged down by the fact that people have the semblance of choice. They don't have actual choice. It's a fundamental sort of thing that I've come to in my life, that I I'm very much a thing where I talk about this all the time. Sort of this analogy, like when I was like 21, I heard Mississippi Fred McDowell and Son House and some other classic blues guys,
Yeah.
and from every day of my life since that moment, blues has been a part of my life.
Cool. Yeah.
But what it did is it made me lament, or not get sad, but it was kind of a WTF. And it's so stupidly simple, but a lot of things, if they're psychological or representational, they are. Every moment before that moment, blues was not part of my life. And a lot of people, like, for example, they get intimidated. I use classical music a lot. And Western classical music, classical traditions from all kinds of countries, which is called, international music, which people aren't intimidated by because of like real world labels and all kinds of things. But Western classical music, Bach and
Yeah.
Beethoven, and all we get,
Yeah.
we're separated from it, and all of a sudden there's this like cultural caste system bullshit. Of course, in art there is as well. But when I heard Dvorak, and I heard um, a couple of composers, just totally by chance, it opened the door to the possibility that I could have a relationship with classical music, and it could be mine, and no one else had to tell me about it. Which is why I super admire Apple. Launched their classical music app, and they have all these curated lists, and it's free, and it's on your phone,
I
and
use that
it's
app all the time. Yeah. I love that classical
and
app,
it
dude.
and because you're so familiar with the app, and it's basically just an adjacent move for you. And what are we really talking about here? We're talking about micro inhibitions.
Hmm.
That's all we're ever talking about. Micro inhibitions, blah, 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 blah. And it's the same with anything out of the mainstream. We're not talking about like, crazy, like underground, subterranean, weird niche, uh, you know, uh, let's call it like debatably legal groups and things. We're just talking about the fact that comics are more than superheroes.
Yeah.
That's what we've come to. Like, and what's awesome is you look at the graphic novel sales the last few years. Look at how well Scholastic has done, as the rise of manga. And you go to any Barnes and Noble and you see like
Transformed.
40 bookshelves of manga and two for everything else.
Hmm.
And you're like, and like a guy my age, especially, I'm like,
Yeah,
hello,
where do I start?
right?
Like, what do I
Well,
do? Yeah, like it's
and
finding your
that's
your entry point to stuff, and
yeah.
that's what's so difficult. I mean, even with music, dude, I wasn't into classical music. Even I was a music major, and I would have never thought that I would have gone for classical music. But bands like Between the Buried and Me and Human Abstract, I was like, if I want to shred like that, I got to learn classical stuff. And so when you think about that in an art perspective, it's like if I'm going to grow and if I'm going to transform and add more flavors to what I'm doing, you need to broaden a bit more. But finding your way into it is the hardest part. Finding something that grasps you and hooks you takes time and a little bit of effort. And a lot of people just don't know where to start. And I feel like this, if you want to get introduced to indie art as a collector, this website is where you're going to start. That's where you're going to realize, oh, this art is beautiful. I can comprehend it. It is amazing. It does deserve respect. Not only does Tony Daniel and Jason Fabuk and all those other dudes, they do remarkable stuff, but this is now a gateway. And you're like, oh, they make books too? Oh, now you're introduced to an indie community.
The storytelling, let's put some respect on comic books as an art form. And why don't we just talk about it as an art form? Because otherwise we just say comic books, and comic books mean superheroes.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking about it as a limitless art form. It is totally, utterly, from its genesis, from its construction, what it is, marriage of words and pictures, pencil, pen, and paper. It is as look at it in a proud way. It's as revolutionary as it gets. Your budget is zero. It's your time, your thought, your energy, your experience, your application, your communication abilities, your skills, your expertise, blah, blah, blah. It's limitless. So music, it's almost like this pre-verbal thing of us. It's like a truth finder thing. It's 8 notes, and it becomes a crucible because it's limited to those notes and half notes and all the things we get, quarter notes, we get
and all that, flats and sharps and all that,
But comics as an art form is limitless. And we talk almost romantically about jazz as an American art form, or blues and what it came out of as an American art form. And we sort of harken back to the environment in which those things could have been created in America. Comics, to a large degree, large swaths of comics as an art form, to a large degree, can be attributed and owned by America as far as its genesis and propagation. And let's keep going. I really feel like we can be romantic about comics as an art form as well, that it's essentially relative infancy itself. And when you see the amount of stories and perspectives and art styles and the types of stories that are being told, there is no better art form. I'll argue that to anybody.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Film is basically an impossible, improbable art form. Every step of the way, it shouldn't work. Every step of the way can completely mess up everything that happened before, all the way down to the editing, the sound, the final cut, the feedback from the producers, the distribution. I mean, that's the end. That's like 5 major steps at the end of the end of the end. It is not supposed to work. When it does, we should all just, even if we're not, lovers of the cross, we should just say hallelujah.
Yeah.
And music is the other beautiful, for me, fundamentally, strangely limitless in a different way, from our sort of interiority, a communicative device, right into our parts of our brain that are actually being a little bit set aside in the modern world thing. Comics is right there with it, and let's treat it that way.
Dude, honestly, preach it. That's one of those things, like you have it to such a T, and you've thought about this so much. I think the community is going to value all these changes coming this coming year, all these opportunities that you're putting in front of us, and the mindset that you're helping shift. And I think Comics Wellspring and all the creators I work with, especially, will completely adapt and love this mindset and this change of direction and this uplift, because it's a component that's just missing. You, again, just like IC3 changed the game, I feel like you're right there, partnered with them and combined with them. It's going to cause a giant indie uptick and uproar, and it's going to completely shift what people are looking for. And I feel like even from our programming we see on TV can even grow from that, because that's where, Umbrella Academy and all those shows, that all came from indie books, in a sense, indie books, quote unquote. But it's one of those things where now we should be getting discovered more than ever. And it feels restrictive unless you're part of those. And now I think the line's going to get even more blurry between Marvel and DC running everything, and then Image and IDW and all these other, the indie publishers who are really the big publishers in everyone's eyes. True indie, the underground people, Apollo City Comics, lesser known, and all these other publishers we work with, like they're really going to be the ones that are harvesting the great fruit from this, and that's who you're attracting. And it's just going to encourage and motivate us even more, to be honest, I feel.
If the indie scene is reliably getting more of the marketplace, we have to talk about this kind of stuff because there's a top down feed, right? And so if manga is making some penetration into the Western markets, if indie stuff is getting like more formally introduced as a normalized component of what people buy, if Marvel and DC combined go from 80% market share to 74 to 68 to 53 to 48 to 35, what fills that void? Now, a lot of it has been manga, but why can't it be indie? And doesn't that mean then that Eli and Cosmic Line, who are doing awesome stuff already,
people,
that you've got like these mature, like properly focused, intentioned groups of people with real good leadership, very important because they can grow now. They can grow. Doesn't that mean that there should be more and more indie creators, and I'll just call them brands again, because it's, Cosmic Line. It's important that, and isn't, Image, Dark Horse, Cosmic Line, all the Fantagraphics, Drawn and Quarterly, aren't they basically part of that kind of publishing narrative arc thing, that there's a role and a place, and people kind of, they move and ebb, and they have ambitions, and sometimes they overstep and they get punched and they get put down a little bit. But there's a maturity there, so that there's I'll come back to this world. Why not keep this an operative thing? There's something reliable there as far as stepping stones. So like there's this gigantic ocean and there's these stones in it, and the next one seems like 2 miles away and there's sharks. Wouldn't it be great if the shark smiled at you, said something in English, you could swim really well, and the next stepping stone was only like 6 feet away? It's like it's that kind of stuff. I think that's what's happening right now. I could be completely wrong, and it would be okay because I still give a shit about indie stuff. And I know that people are trying to extract joy out of a stone. I know they're banging their heads over the same things over and over again. That's the world right now. I mean, tell me if you love sequential storytelling, keeping it really like, vague and 50,000 square foot right now. If you like sequential storytelling, why the hell wouldn't you love an indie story? The only reason you wouldn't is because it's overwhelming. Let's get rid of that. And if we show you the art and we contextualize the art, at the very worst, what we're doing is trying to create a soft or actual patron-based system for indie creators. And God bless them. Go out, try to get your book. You have your own reasons for doing it. You have people that are going to read it. You have publishers that you want to work with. We're not involved in any of that, really. We're just trying to slightly make things a little bit more buoyant for you in a sort of patron way with art collectors. The future's good, man. I think, honestly, for indie creators, it ain't easy, and it can be rocky, but I think that's where things are gravitating.
I think you're on the right track. It's what I've been seeing over the past year, and talking to, the dozens and dozens of indie creators that I speak to every single week and draw with every week. This is what we're looking for. This is what we need. This is something that we should all be getting involved with. So anybody watching this episode, check out all the links we're adding to the episode description, and that way you could be involved with all this. Keep up with IC3, keep up with all the things that we're doing, of course, with Comix Wellspring, and with what you guys are doing. I'm blown away by it. I think I'm so hyped to tell my team about it at Apollo City Comics and get all of these creators involved, because there's no excuse not to, honestly.
Thank you. And honestly, I usually don't talk this much about it because, I like the old slogan. It's the easiest way to have God laugh at you kind of thing. But we're going to do it anyway. And it's more about how we do it that ends up being more important.
And
The
your
timeline and how
intentions.
we do it.
Your intentions are what people look at so much. And I'm so glad you got to share your mindset, your background, your history. And honestly, there's so much
Thank you.
more I would love to peel open and talk about. We're hitting our hour mark here, but we got to get
Okay,
you
yeah.
back on the show, and we got to be, I'll definitely be more involved with you in general. So I'm sure we could hear more future plans between us and announcements and whatnot. So
Anytime, please. And whatever we do, anything that looks interesting, let me know. I'll tell you about it. Whatever you want. I can get other people on too, because
yeah,
don't like to listen to myself.
I understand completely. Are you going to be at IC3 this March? Are you going to be attending? You're hanging out there?
Are you kidding?
Awesome. Cool. I'm hyped to see you
Are
there.
you,
Yeah.
are
Super
you
excited.
kidding?
Yeah.
I'm serving the pizzas.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Love it. Can't wait. I can't wait to speak to you more. Thank you so much for your time, Kasra. It really means a
Thank
lot.
you.
So
Thank you so much.
we'll
Thank you.
sign off
Thank you
here.
for
Do you
Comix Wellspring.
any other quick announcements real fast before we sign off this episode?
No, we got. I think just go to Comic Art Fans, have a little bit of a seizure because it's a lot, but maybe download the Comic Art Fans app, and there'll be a video up soon that'll really orientate you to it. And so that's dip your toe in a Comic Art Fans. That's all I'll leave people with. Take your time. There's no rush.
Love it. And for all of our watchers, don't forget, stay inspired, stay creative, and thanks for hanging.